Thank you to everyone who came out, and thank you for clapping. I know most of you already. So I mean, we'll keep it pretty informal. I won't do the whole story of my life, all that stuff. What do people want to know? Do you want to just know, like, how did I get interested in politics, that kind of thing? What do we do? And then we'll break down into questions. I mean, I'm happy to do that. All right.
Start with the starting at community college part.
Most importantly. All right, so I'm Paul Mark. I'm the state representative for the 2nd Berkshire District, that was already said. The 2nd Berkshire District is 16 communities. It starts in Pittsfield in the west, and it winds through the hill towns of Berkshire and Franklin County, comes here to Greenfield, and goes all the way east to Northfield, which obviously touches the New Hampshire border. So it's probably the largest geographic district in the entire state. Even though other representatives might have more towns than me, I think just in terms of the distance, it's over 400 square miles. So it's a lot. It's a lot of work. It's about 60,000 miles a year in the car, just trying to hit every town consistently and going down to Boston a couple times a week. It's a lot of work. I got this session of the legislature, I'm the vice chair of the Rules Committee. So I was promoted. It might not sound like a promotion to people, but I was promoted from Vice Chair Higher Ed to Vice Chair of Rules. And as Vice Chair of Rules, I don't serve on any other committees anymore. And what Rules is kind of like the moderator of the House. We set the rules. We set the rules for the debate, how amendments are going to be filed, the rules for conduct of the individual members. So sometimes I say it's the moderator of the House. Sometimes I say we're like the traffic cop of the House. It really... It's a lot of interesting work, but it's out of the policy arena, which is kind of different for me and not really what I was expecting to happen. I first got interested in politics when I was about 8 years old, and the professors and such are going to remember this name, but some of the students might not. Mike Dukakis? Does everyone know who Dukakis is? Okay, so Mike Dukakis was the governor of Massachusetts, and he was running for president back in 1988. And he was marching in the 4th of July parade out in my town. And for whatever reason, all these people lying on the sidelines, Mike Dukakis came over and he shook hands with little 8-year-old Paul Mark, and I was hooked. I was excited. I was like, wow, I just shook hands with the president. The man's going to be the president of the United States. And so I started watching the campaign, and I got really excited. I waited, and I had a bumper sticker on the wall in my bedroom. And then Election Day came, and I watched, and I probably went to bed, and the next morning I woke up and I found he'd lost. And I couldn't believe it, because I had this bumper sticker on the wall in my bedroom, and I was sure that was going to deliver the election for him. But I determined even then, at a really young age, that I was going to get involved in politics, because unlike watching sports, when you watch sports, you get excited, and when they lose, there's nothing you can do about it. You can't change the outcome, no matter how much you cheer or how many games you go to. But with politics, you can be part of the team. You can get on the field and actually play, which was really exciting to me. So when I was 16, I started volunteering for campaigns. I started off working for Bill Clinton, running for re-election, and I've worked on at every level of campaigns, whether it's the lowest intern to managing a campaign, at every level of government, from city to town meeting to state to presidential, and everything in between. A lot of my values were shaped when I was about 13 years old. My father got laid off from his job. The warehouse he worked at, that was it, they closed. That was it. We found out the day before Christmas. So it was really hard. We went through some tough times. There was a couple of years where we really struggled. I remember our water heater broke, and we didn't have hot water for a couple of months. And there was nothing we could do about it. And we'd boil the water on the stove. And I just remember thinking, even at that young age, that it wasn't fair, that my parents were good people, they worked hard, they played by all the rules. Why should we have to suffer? When I was about 18, right out of high school, I went to UMass. And I was there for about a year. And it was good. But I realized I was spending too much money, that I wasn't successful. I couldn't afford to be there anymore, so I left, and I got a job full-time. And I was very lucky. I got a job at the phone company. It was called Bell Atlantic back then. It's called Verizon now. And I became a lineman. And I joined a union. I was part of the IBEW. I got involved in the union. 6 months into working at the phone company, we went on strike. And when you're 20 years old, being on strike is awesome, because you're yelling at people and you're carrying picket signs, and people slip you beer, and so it was really a lot of fun. But it also taught me a lot. It taught me a lot that people who had families and had kids to worry about, they were willing to sacrifice their job, to take time off from work unpaid, to fight for something that was a bigger picture than themselves, to make sure that they all had health care, that they all had safety on the job, that they all had job security. And that really meant a lot to me. It was a big lesson. When I was at the phone company now, they had pretty good tuition plan. I was paid better, so I was able to go back to school. And in 8 years, I was able to go through an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a law degree, and a doctoral degree while I worked full-time, and I drove back and forth across the state from out in the Berkshires to Boston a couple nights a week as necessary. And I always talk about that. When I first ran, I would talk about it to show that hard work could overcome anything and that everyone has deserves the opportunity for success that I had. But now I talk about a lot in terms of higher education, that I always had the talent and I always had the drive to complete those degrees and make a better life for myself, but it wasn't fair that someone should miss out on that because financial problems are standing in the way. And so I've done a lot in the legislature to try to fight to change that. In 2010, the former representative of my district in the western part of the district, Greenfield wasn't part of the district then, announced he wasn't going to run again. People started coming to me and say, Paul, why don't you run? You're always involved in politics. You always have all these great ideas. Put your money where your mouth is. And so I listened to them and I went for it. And it was a three-way primary. I won that. It was a three-way general election. I won that too. And I was honored to be sworn in as state representative in January 2011 for the first time down in Boston. My first term, I served on the Agriculture Committee, the Higher Ed Committee, and the Mental Health and Substance Abuse Committee, all really good committees for this area, really interesting subject matter. My second term, I guess they saw something they liked out of me, and they promoted me to the vice chair of the Higher Education Committee. I remained on the Agriculture Committee, and then I moved from mental health to tourism, arts, and cultural development, also three important committees for this area. The chairs of the Higher Ed Committee asked me and my Senate counterpart, Senator Eileen Donohue from Lowell, to chair a subcommittee on student loans and debt. Very important subject to me. The punchline to that story about me going through 5 degrees in 8 years and I got out of it debt-free and everything is then I met this wonderful woman from at UMass Amherst, and we got married, and I married into her $750 a month in debt. And she's worth every penny, believe me. But it's insane, because when you think of $750 in debt, that someone would have to take out that amount of loans to get through college, to pursue their dreams, $750 a month is more than I pay for my mortgage. That's $750 a month that we're not reinvesting in the economy, we're not saving for retirement. When we talk about having kids, that's a big obstacle, because that's a lot of money that we don't have free up. And if she were to stop working and for us to have kids, or if I were to stop working if we were to have kids, it would really be an obstacle, as I'm sure everyone else has experienced or will experience someday. As part of the subcommittee on student loans and debt, we had 7 hearings all over the state, including one right here at GCC, and I know some of you were there and asked good questions that were important. We wanted to make sure that we hit every single area of the Commonwealth. I was able to pick the members of the committee, of the subcommittee. I picked based on geography and based on diverse backgrounds and interests, but I always made sure they had a college in their district. And then the colleges we held the hearings at, we made sure those were diverse as well. We had 2 community colleges, we had a UMass campus, we had a private university, 2 private universities, we hit one of the state universities. We made sure that every different type of student had a chance to come out from every geography in the state. What we heard was unbelievable in terms of how scary some of it is, but also in terms of the great ideas that came out of people, whether it was students, professors, college administrators, just interested members of the public, parents. We took what we heard and we came up with a report, which I have right here. It's large. If anyone wants it afterwards, I can email it to you if you're interested. We came up with 9 different recommendations. I'll read them since we're here. Number 1, expand financial literacy for all Massachusetts students. Number 2, deepen investment in public higher education. Number 3, increase and reform state aid. Number 4, decrease the time to degree. Number 5, regulate for-profit schools. Number 6, create incentives to save. Number 7, advanced loan forgiveness programs. Number 8, develop private-public partnerships and collaboration. And number 9, support state partnerships with our federal officials. We've seen that firsthand. Elizabeth Warren was here about a month ago on campus. She's been a great advocate. She's been great to work with. The 9 recommendations translated into a bill that we filed this year. Myself, my co-chair, and the 2 chairs of the Higher Ed Committee, 34-section bill designed to implement all of these measures and make college more affordable and attainable for anyone that's interested in going and has the ability and the talent. As a result of all this work, again, the leadership of the House, I guess they liked what they saw, and they took me off higher ed. And they put me on to the vice chair of rules, which I said is a big promotion, and it's really good for this area. It's good in that it increases the influence we have in the State House, which very small towns, very remote area. It's really important to have really good advocates. We have now myself and Vice Chair of Rules. We have Steve Kulik to my south, who's the Vice Chair of the Ways and Means Committee, which is the money. And we now have the Senate President, Stan Rosenberg. He's our local senator, which is the first time a Western Massachusetts senator has held the presidency of the Senate since at least the 1960s, and I don't think one that covers Greenfield has ever held it. And I think the last time, Senator Rosenberg lives in Amherst, I think the last time the senator from Amherst and Northampton was the president of the Senate was when Calvin Coolidge was the president of the Senate, and he obviously moved on to bigger and better things after that. I'm excited to be back there for a third term. It's still a lot of work. It's a different place that I'm in right now, but I'm still able to focus on policy issues that are important to me. I'm still going to be fighting for higher ed, and I'm happy to be here today and open it up to the floor, whether it's questions, clarifications, you want to talk about student debt, whatever anyone wants to know. That wasn't too thorough, was it? You know, it's a long story when it starts. When I was 8 years old, and and I'm 35 now. So, please, Buzz.
Hey, Paul. This region is so lucky to have Paul as a representative. He's such a zealous and intelligent advocate for these regions. He also has hosted on several occasions GCC students who walked us through the legislature, and we've had incredible experiences meeting some of the state's highest officials, so I want to thank him again for that.
Thank you.
And my question is, there's a bill right now that's floating around, it's not a bill, there's a proposal with respect to rules that joint committees be severed by chambers. The ostensible argument is that senators are so outnumbered by you people in the House that joint committees don't fairly give senators an equal opportunity to have their say. How do you feel about that proposal?
As a member of the House, I think it's a terrible idea. The senators already have more power and more influence than we do. There's only 40 of them, there's 160 of us, so it's much easier for any individual House member to be overlooked. Whereas a senator, you can't overlook them. They all chair a committee. Every House member does not chair a committee. Every House member might not even end up on a committee they want to be on. That's how different it is. When a senator calls, say, the commissioner of higher education, they'll probably get a call back a lot faster than the average representative would get. So when you talk about diluting the power of the House further and increasing the power of the Senate, I'm against that as a House member. And the idea is the House and Senate are supposed to be equal branches. Now, that being said, now as a neutral person, as a person who studies, again, I have a law degree and I have a doctoral degree in law and public policy, I think what the Senate is proposing is a solution in search of a problem. We have a joint committee system. We've had a joint committee system since 1857. We have a full-time legislature, one of the few states with a full-time legislature year-round. And I think the system has worked really well. Massachusetts leads in almost every category there is. And in terms, even more than just leading in, say, where we rank for veteran services, where we rank for higher education services, we lead in areas that are so important. I mean, we're the first on gay marriage. We were the first in the revolution. I mean, since the revolution, we've always been first in groundbreaking policy matters. I don't see what the problem is. And when you talk about it in just terms of House versus Senate, one of the arguments that's been made is what you just said, is that, well, there's more House members on the joint committees and there's fewer Senate members, so the House must be getting so many more bills out and the Senate bills are getting stymied. It's not true. 46% of the House bills get out of joint committee, 55% of Senate bills get out of joint committees. So there's really not a problem. I have a lot of respect for Senator Rosenberg, both as a colleague and as a friend and as someone that we overlap districts. But I think he is making a mistake. And I think if the committees ultimately break and have a separate House and a separate Senate committee, I think it will be a disservice to the public, because now you're going to be expected to go to 2 public hearings. If people hire a lobbyist or an advocate, you're going to have to hire twice the number of advocates and lobbyists. And I think it just will break down the collegiality that we have in Massachusetts. What you see in Washington is gridlock and problems. That doesn't happen in Massachusetts. And it doesn't matter whether we have a Republican governor working across the aisle. It doesn't happen here. We find a way to come to consensus at some point. We don't agree on everything. But I would say 80% of the time, we find a way to work in the best interest of the public. I don't think we need a barrier to that. And as the vice chair of rules, I definitely have to be against it. But no, it's a complicated issue, and it's one that it's creeping into the public right now, and it's beginning to become a problem because some of the joint committees are just moving ahead and having hearings as they should, and some of them are waiting, and we haven't had a lot of policy hearings yet at this point. It hasn't affected business yet because we're coming into budget right now on the House side and Senate budget next month. But if May comes and goes and we're still having this fight, we have to move on one way or another, or it is going to start to affect how bills get out in a timely manner.
You mentioned the obstacles to various things, including having children. You were talking about student debt, but I had a different question about obstacles, which is obstacles to actually making progress through the legislature. Surely there are lots of them. You put a bill and you make a path forward. I probably understand the process better at the federal level and the state level.
Yep.
But there's lots of things that can get in the way. There's ways that various members can throw up roadblocks.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what are those obstacles? How do you, as an individual member, overcome them? Mm-hmm. And if this is relevant, specifically, how does the fact that there's basically only one party running things affect that?
So a bill is filed. Every member of the legislature, whether they're a House member or Senate member, can file a bill. At this point, there's close to 6,000 bills that have been filed, and there's 200 members total, 106 since January 7th. Yeah, so, well, there's 200 members, so there's 160 representatives and 40 senators, and you figure 200 people, if each of them even wants to file 20 bills, you're at 4,000 already. So it sounds like a big number, but it's really not. And of the 6,000, probably 2,000 of those are local things. Like right now I have a bill to get a liquor license approved for Greenfield, and I have another bill to approve a special election in Greenfield. So those aren't really substantive policy issues, but they're important, and they need to be passed in law. There's no other way to do it. So when a bill comes, first it is assigned by the clerk by subject matter to one of the joint committees or House committee or Senate committee, depending on the subject matter. If it dealt with the rules of the House, it would come to the House Rules Committee. But for the vast majority of bills, so we'll use the higher ed bill. The higher ed bill goes to the Joint Committee on Higher Education. At some point, the Joint Committee on Higher Education, for this bill and every bill, will have a public hearing. Anyone's welcome to come in. Sometimes, like I said, we do it on the road. Sometimes, most of the times, it's in Boston. People come in, they offer their testimony, advocacy for, against, neutral, ask questions, that kind of thing. Members of the committee ask questions of the people testifying. Once that's over, the committee then deliberates. It might not be that same day, it might be months later, but at some point they deliberate and they will vote to either report the bill favorably, report the bill unfavorably, or send it for more study. If the bill is reported favorably, it then moves to we're going to use the House. We'll say it's a House bill. It will move to the Committee on House Steering and Policy. Steering and Policy will set scheduling for debate. The bill then goes to the Committee on Bills in Third Reading. They look at constitutionality. Is this something that's already on the books, that it's redundant? Is there money attached? That kind of thing. If there is money attached, it also then goes to Ways and Means. If there's no money attached from third reading, it can then be reported to the full House for a vote, whether it's a roll call vote or a voice vote. If passed by the House, same thing happens on the Senate side. If there are differences, the House and Senate appoint what they call a conference committee, and those members work out the differences, and then they present the new final version to both the House and Senate for approval. We can't make changes at that point, so it's up or down vote. If we approve it, it then goes to the governor, who can veto it, and in Massachusetts, he has the power, at least with the budget, to issue line item vetoes, whereas in Washington, it's all or nothing. If the governor vetoes it, or portions thereof, or offers an amendment, it then comes back to us. We can override the governor with 2/3 vote. So it's a very complicated process, even to begin with, and that alone is an obstacle. So the obstacles are, at any point, the idea you thought was really good, everyone else thinks is stupid, which happens a lot. Another obstacle is something you thought was a really good idea. Maybe it's already being done and you just didn't realize it. And so there's a different avenue you can pursue to try to make it happen. Or there's another program that you thought would be good for Greenfield alone, but now you're realizing, but if I just jumped onto the one that's happening in Amherst, then everyone would win. The next obstacle is you have a good idea, but for someone to agree to vote for it, they like part of it, but they don't like all of it. So they either want to take something off of what you've offered, or they want to add something to it. So like I said, we offered a bill, 34 sections for higher ed. I'm under no illusion that this is going to pass all 34 sections the way it is, but it might end up that the majority, the consensus, can approve of 8. And if 8 sections pass, it's still a really big win, and then we'll work on the other 26 next session. Because everyone has a very different district. They represent a very different constituency with very different interests. For the most part, I find that the representatives and senators really are a reflection of the area that they live in. So people really do reflect their districts, and it's just such a great example of democracy does actually work pretty well, at least in Massachusetts. What people think are a priority in Andover, over near the New Hampshire border in the Merrimack Valley, very different than the priorities of Brockton down in the South Shore, which are also very different than the priorities of, say, a town like Hawley that I represent. Very different interests. So when you have something that's specific to your district, I'll use broadband internet, was something that's really important to my district in the smaller towns. You have to find a way to get other stakeholders interested in it. So when I tell the representative from Worcester that, I don't have the internet at home, they kind of laugh at me and they say, what do you want me to do about it? And I say, well, what I want is I want you to approve of this $50 million we're going to send to help connect the towns with last mile service. And then someday they're going to need something that's specific to Worcester, and you can't just vote against it, because you have to consider how does this affect them, and how am I able to help their people the same way they've been able to help us, and how does it make the entire Commonwealth better? But yeah, there's obstacles in that people are against it. Sometimes it's advocacy groups, sometimes it's well-organized advocacy groups. Sometimes it's partisan. We don't get a lot of that, but there can be issues that one party or another will raise that obviously the other party is just philosophically opposed to, and you can't win their votes on it. There's almost no way. But like I said, we don't get a lot of that in Massachusetts, and that might play into, you mentioned how overwhelmingly the legislature is Democratic, and we've seen over the last 8 years, we had a Democratic governor as well, so there was a lot of Democratic priorities going forth, but no one should ever feel like the Republican, because they were in the minority, were just ignored and marginalized to the side. It doesn't work that way. At least in Massachusetts, it doesn't work that way. You try to be collaborative. You try to still take their best ideas, because good ideas can come from anywhere. Now, for the first time in my career as a legislator, we're seeing a different process, because we do have a Republican governor. And so even though we're an overwhelming majority in the legislature, he has a lot of sway, and he can back up his minority caucus in the House and Senate in a way that Governor Patrick obviously wasn't there for them. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But so there's a lot of obstacles that are built into the system, and there's a lot of obstacles that come at you one way or another. But our job is to be the best advocates we can, try to convince people why what we're saying is right and why our areas are important, and we're just always competing for attention. Because like I said, when there's 160 members with their own priorities debating 6,000 bills, it's a lot of work to get attention to your area. So when you think about something like, we did get $50 million for broadband, and we do get a lot of money for agriculture and higher education, it's actually miraculous that we were able to get someone from Boston to vote to give us broadband that they don't even have.
The state of Massachusetts spends $50 million putting in the infrastructure for broadband. Mm-hmm. Comcast and Cox and all those other companies then use it to provide services.
Not supposed to work that way.
Isn't that how it ends up working, though?
No, it shouldn't, because Comcast and Cox don't have a presence in those towns at all. So there's really nothing for them to jump onto. But what it's supposed to happen, the way it's designed right now, the towns are going to have a town meeting over the next couple of months, and a number of the towns have created what they call a municipal light plant. And so basically it's an electric company or a telecommunications company that is owned by the town itself. These towns, and that's been in law since back in the early 1900s, because back then, guess what? They didn't want to give us electricity service either, so we had to build our own back then too. So the towns, some of them are grouping into a cooperative, and the idea is that this cooperative will apply and get the money from the state. It will be backed up by money from the towns, and so then the town itself will own the network. So what you just said will never happen. because obviously we've all been customers of these companies, and I've been a customer of Verizon my entire life, whether it was through my parents, and my grandparents were their customers, and since 1876, people in this area have been customers of theirs. The fact that they choose not to invest in us, in spite of us giving them money throughout our lives, is disgusting. And so the idea is, if the towns own the municipal light plant, we'll never be in that position again. That someone can just decide, you guys, there's not enough profit in it quickly enough, so we're going to leave you behind the rest of the world. So that's the idea.
And right now, the contract for Wired West asks every single town as they get money from the state, to convey over on the equipment that's going to be purchased.
I didn't hear that last thing.
To convey to Wired West the equipment which is purchased with that money.
Yep.
I've heard some people say, well, that doesn't seem fair. Each town who got that allotment from the state should be the sole owner, and it should lease for $1 to Wired West, the actual equipment, just in case Wired West goes under for whatever reason. Do you know anything with respect to, from your perspective?
I've been hearing what you're saying, and what I've been taking from it is that people are confused as to what Wired West is, and that might include Wired West itself. To me, what Wired West is an extension of these towns. It is the amalgamation of these municipal light plants. So it isn't a separate entity. It's like saying the police department owns the car. Yeah, but really the town owns the car. It's not something separate. But like I said, I don't know if they fully understand that. The townspeople definitely, and I don't know that Wired West either understands it or knows how to explain that. That you're not ceding anything to a different entity. It can't just leave. It's not going to incorporate and walk away tomorrow. It is this municipal light plant entity. It is part of the town. Yeah, so I think if people can get their head around that concept and really make sure that everyone understands it and that is what's going to happen, I think it would relieve some people, because if the town puts in all this money, right, it doesn't want to go, and then they become profitable and they start selling off pieces to China. No, I get all that, but it's never supposed to work that way.
When you offered up your sports metaphor about how you can influence the outcome of the political world, but not necessarily sports.
Yep.
Very true. But I think actually a lot of people believe they have more capacity to influence the sports outcome.
Yeah, so.
I actually think there are people who believe that
I
and
think
don't
so.
believe that they can influence their communities.
Right.
So I'm just curious about your strategies and your thoughts about how do we convince people that the metaphor that you offered up is actually accurate. We can't make it.
It's a two-way street, definitely, and I'm gonna talk about it from both sides of the table, actually. So as an individual before, one thing I did was I volunteered on campaigns. That matters because you get to know people, you get to know other activists, and you get to know these candidates. And if you spend time, believe it or not, it doesn't seem this way when you read it in the paper, but candidates for office want you to know them. They are looking for people to talk to. They want to tell you what they're about and try to sell you and get you involved or hear what your suggestions are. So following a campaign, getting involved in a campaign, that's a really great way to get involved. It's not, everybody doesn't have the time for that, I understand. Everybody doesn't have maybe as much interest in it. But following the campaign, even from afar, is good, but follow it accurately. Don't just trust that I read something in the newspaper, so that must be the gospel truth. It is never correct. They do their best. They do a great job for the most part, at least locally, but they can't get the whole story. The 10-minute speech, this entire speech so far, they would boil down to 3 sentences. How could it possibly cover everything we've talked about? It can't. It covers what they saw and what they want you to know about it. So taking more time, talking to people, reading literature, looking up on the websites, Facebook, asking questions, emailing people. Again, candidates, they want to talk to you, they want to talk to you by email too, and they want you to call them. So there's all of that. Being involved in the government process, that's important. Coming down to the State House for Buzz Eisenberg's day, that's important. Things like that, getting to know us. When you meet your elected official, whatever level of government it is, I hope it makes you feel more comfortable afterwards that it was just a regular person. I can call this person, I can talk to them afterwards, they're going to want to listen to me. There's a reason I'm here. It's because I want to hear and I want people to be involved and I want people to be excited about government, which is pretty rare these days. So on my side of the table, that brings me to my side of the table. As an elected official, I remember that it was important to me when someone would come to my class and talk to me. It was important, again, Dukakis. Dukakis comes back into the story. Dukakis was one of my teachers at Northeastern. It was awesome. because he talked about the presidential campaign. He talked about campaign for health care back in the 1980s in Massachusetts. We had universal health care. Somehow it never got implemented. Just amazing things that people don't know or don't remember. So I always try to do that too. Maybe I get someone else interested. Maybe, like I said, I just put someone at ease that they realize they can send me an email. And I think, again, like Elizabeth Warren was here. That was the same reason. She's on a different schedule because she covers the whole state and she's a national superstar. But she was still here. I remember, I think you asked a question. Yeah, I mean, hopefully that made you feel that she was a real person. She was someone that, if she had the time, she would be interested and she would follow up, and at the least her staff or people like me would that are more locally accessible. So I mean, there's not a cookie cutter way to get involved, but anything you can do to get involved, even voting, make sure you vote. Something as simple as that. If you don't have time or interest to do anything else, vote, because people being elected officials and advocacy groups, they know where people vote and they know where people don't vote. So there are districts in this state. In 2012, I got almost 17,000 votes, and that's out of a district of 41,000 people. In some states, the winner got like 1,100. So if I was a statewide candidate looking to campaign and looking to shape my values and learn more, I would come to the district where 17,000 people voted instead of the one that 1,100 people voted. So it does matter. Your vote does matter. And then just to put in perspective how a vote can matter, when I was first elected, a gentleman who wasn't incumbent tied. He was running for re-election and he tied. He literally had a tie. And he found out that like a relative, like a cousin or something, had died, and so 5 of his family members were there. And they didn't vote. So imagine those 5 people, they would have made the difference in the election. So because it was a tie, the House of Representatives and the Secretary of State ordered that the election had to be rerun. And so they had another vote in like April of the year. The incumbent was allowed to stay in his seat until the election, and then he lost. He lost by like 800 votes in the redo. So every vote really does matter. You know, I think even presidential level, I want to say, I'm probably getting the wrong election, but maybe it was even Dukakis Bush or Jimmy Carter. But there was an election that if 5 votes had gone differently in every county in the country, that the result would have been different. So, or Bush versus Gore, people probably remember that back in 2000. You know, where the person that lost the popular vote won the Electoral College in the end. But I mean, you think about in Florida, I think the margin was 300 people, and that's a state of 20-something million. And in New Hampshire, right up the street, I think the margin was 21,000. Maybe it was, no, I think the margin was 7,000. So if he had won New Hampshire, if Gore had won New Hampshire, Florida wouldn't have mattered because he would have had the electoral votes. And I mean, I hate to get political, but we're talking politics. 8,000 people fewer voted for Gore. 21,000 people voted for Nader. You know, there was no difference, right, between Gore and Bush. But so there's a lot of ways to get in politics and to be engaged and to make your voice heard, and they all matter.
About the student debt thing, I am fortunate enough that my parents can help me out, but my girlfriend unfortunately isn't. She's around $30,000 in debt from UMass, and she's going to Simmons in the fall. Realistically, where do you think it's going on the national level, and how does that differ from the state level?
The national level, they have powers that we don't have. And the biggest power they have is to lower the student loan interest rate, the federal student loan interest rate. Elizabeth Warren, when we were doing this subcommittee, she held a series of forums as well, and she would invite us to them. And her bill last year was the banks charge each other an interest rate of, I want to say, 0.75, and the federal government at the time was charging, I want to say, 5.75 for student loans, and this was resulting in the federal government made a $55 billion profit off of student loans. And I mean, the idea is we want our population to be educated and to be ready to join the workforce and to have a successful career in life. So how would you possibly punish them by taking $55 billion out of their pockets that didn't need to be there? Elizabeth Warren filed the bill to lower it. It was not successful. She was able to get some kind of a compromise where the rate did go down, but it didn't go down to where it should have been. And so she continues to fight. Again, not to get political, there's a very different scene in Washington. It's very difficult to get things passed, especially for a senator from Massachusetts, we'll say, at the moment. In the state, what we're trying to focus on is completely different than that, is the things I named. Is before I was vice chair of the higher education committee, I want to say Massachusetts was 48th in the amount we invested in public higher education out of 50 states. I mean, no one thinks that. Massachusetts, we're all about higher education. But it just isn't the way it worked out in reality. We're in the 30s now. I'm happy that we've raised up to in the 30s because we've made major investments over the last couple of years. We want to keep doing that. We want to invest. So one of the stats I didn't read was the average person that goes for a bachelor's degree at a public university in Massachusetts saves, I want to say, $22,000. And if you start off 2 years at a community college, you save another $11,000 over that. So, I mean, you guys are already smarter than everyone else in the state anyway. But so funding's only one part of it, because there's people that go to private universities too. We want them to have the opportunity as well. It's not just about publics, even though publics are great, but I'm a graduate of both. We want to make sure that scholarships and grants are funded at a higher level. I have amendments right now in the budget to seek that, both for scholarships and for higher education, just for the community colleges, state universities, and UMasses. When we talk about loan forgiveness, I have a bill in for loan forgiveness for healthcare professionals to come serve a rural area. I have a bill in for lawyers to serve a rural area. Who thought we needed more lawyers? But we really do in rural areas. It's difficult to attract people out here. Social workers, what an important area of work, but one that costs a lot to get into and pays almost nothing after, but is an investment that saves this Commonwealth, saves the people of this Commonwealth millions of dollars every single day. We have, what else? Savings plans. Right now, you can join what they call a 529 plan. It has tax advantages. You can start saving at the federal level. We're one of the few states that we don't match those tax benefits at the state level. And we don't, in some states, more rare, but we should be doing this, states match. They match what you put in. And they get people thinking about it, and they advertise it well. Because, I mean, if you're starting to, as we all know here, if you're starting to just think about how am I going to pay for college when you're a senior in high school, it's too late. You have to start when you're a kid, or at the least when you're in junior high. So it's a multi-tiered approach is what we can do here at the state level. The federal level, they have different, again, with the student loans, interest rates. They also have access to so much more money. I mean, the federal budget is like $3 trillion, whereas ours is $38 billion this year. So very, very different access to capital that they could, like the president proposed, the free community college plan. I think the states would have to buy in. I don't think it's going to pass this session because of the makeup down there in Congress. But, good ideas. People are thinking about it at every level of government. It's important. Please.
Like how would the House potentially be able to support degree programs that are trying to address an overall arcing issue that is not just relative to students and education, but to society as well?
Right. So how do we promote a career or a degree path that is in the public interest at the moment versus how do we make that a preference and make it important for people? I mean, the easiest thing anyone can do, because it doesn't cost any money, is to build awareness. If people are concerned about the environment and people want to try to help the environment and people want to look for jobs, I mean, a big part of college now is trying to find something a job. Just making people realize that there are incentives in solar energy and renewable energy, and that you're going to have a pretty good time getting into that field after college, or whether it's nursing. Keeping people up to date, I guess this would be a role for guidance counselors or outreach counselors from the college, letting people know these are the jobs that are in demand right now. This is something you might want to go into. I mean, that's an easy thing. Setting up pilot programs, setting up grant programs, that's something else we could do. When I talk about the student loan forgiveness, obviously that is targeted to, because there is one already, like you said, about inner city teachers. And the lawyers program out in South Dakota is actually working really well. South Dakota has a terrible problem attracting lawyers because who wants to live in South Dakota? But they've been doing a lot, and they've been wildly successful with it. Oh, and then public-private partnerships. So when I went to STIC, I was a graduate of a program at Verizon called Next Step. And what Next Step was, they would send me to STIC 1 day a week on company time to get a degree in telecommunications. So, I mean, finding a company that is willing to invest in its workforce like that is huge. And that's the model over in Germany, is you sign up with BMW, and BMW sends you to school 3 days, and then you work for them the other 2 days, something like that. And then when you come out, you're a better employee, you have the skills you need, the most up-to-date skills, and you have loyalty to this company. I know I felt a lot of loyalty to Verizon that they invested in me, and it meant a lot to me. And I've been trying to show people, when I go around and talk about that aspect of it, that if they could do it at Verizon, which was a union environment with a contract, and then when the program ended, it ended. That was it. When they had run through everyone that wanted to do it, it didn't stay as like this albatross around their neck. They ended it. I think that if you can do that in that environment, you can do that anywhere, and with good results.
How does that work? Like, how do you get that information that Kia from Greenfield, Massachusetts called and thanked you? Do you listen to those messages? Do they get counted for points for you?
So,
like, how does that work?
For me, I only have one staffer, and you know Chris. You've met Chris. And Chris is stationed in a different town in the district every single day, poor kid. And what Chris does on the day when I don't see him is Chris sends me an email at the end of the day telling me Kia called in, Joan called in, Peter called in, exactly what happened. And do I have to call them back? Were they just giving me a great job? Were they giving me what the hell did you think? You know, he gives me the whole gamut. So that's one way, and it does mean something to me. When a number of people call me and ask me to do something before it happens, that means a lot. It means more when I already have a relationship with you, and I know, all right, I know Kia's story. She's honest. She knows what she's talking about. I respect what she's telling me. I'm going to go. She's an expert on that. I'm going to go with what she's saying. That does make a difference to me. And then 50 other people wrote in who I don't know, but are saying making the same case, and I can relate to it. Yeah, of course that makes a difference. After the fact, if you've already done something, getting a thank you, that's awesome. It feels great. And then if it is successful, I think you sent me. It was you. You were sending me pictures of your son about something. I was like, wow, that was awesome. You know. So that's why this is the way I do the job. Is I answer my own emails. I'm on Facebook. I answer my own Facebook, and I spend as much time getting to know people as I can, because I want you then to be able to interact with me. And yeah, it always feels great to have someone tell you did a good job. I was at office hours yesterday up in the town of Rowe, which is like 350 people. The select board was there. It's like, Paul, no one's coming in. I said, Marilyn, nobody comes in takes the time off from their work, comes in at 3 in the afternoon and say, hey, Paul, keep up the good work. I wanted you to know that. They come in to complain. So the fact that nobody's here is great. Yeah, feedback does mean a lot. And it's always, this is the worst thing anyone can do is, after the fact, if I've done something you don't like, to just call up or leave an email just really angry. And I can't, seriously, because it's like, most of the time, I didn't know this was happening. Nobody called me. I didn't know this was important to anyone. That happens a lot, because in the budget, there's already, we're going to debate close to 1,100 amendments next week. And so if nobody's calling me on an amendment about, I don't know what, about new microphones for community colleges, well, why would I think that was important? It seems superfluous. So it's always good to have a dialogue. And if someone did something you don't like, unless they're a repeat offender and you have a relationship with them, but the first time out, always give them a call or an email and say, I was just wondering this is how I felt, and why did you go that way? And sometimes there's really an in-depth explanation that maybe didn't make sense just looking at it in the newspaper, but will make sense if you talk it out. And again, part of this job is compromise, because you have to find a bill. The magic numbers in the House, the magic number in the House is 81, and the magic number in the Senate is 21. That's a majority. And so sometimes to find 81 people to vote for something, there's things you might vote for that are part of a package that individually you might not vote for, but when they're part of a package, there's 3 good things and 1 bad, but the 3 good things are that important that you vote for it. And then when someone gets really mad, like back to the broadband thing, someone called and said, why didn't we get $100 million for broadband? I'm like, people are spending $50 million to give 33 towns internet service that they don't have. We did everything we could. You know what I mean? Don't get mad at me for doing our best. You know, if we did nothing, would be a different story. So it's just good to interact, and yeah, feedback does matter, negative and positive. And if I do actually do something wrong, I do want to know about it, because if I made a mistake, I don't want to make it again.
So you mentioned like there might be a line item that's like 500 microphones or whatever. How do you inform the public that you're making these decisions, or like?
It's a lot. In a generic sense, everything we do is on the legislature website. So every amendment is listed right now, and
Eager to be.
well, yeah, I know, but I can't individually go to 41,000 people and tell them. So this is what I did. I try, but I can't have a conversation like that. So everything we do is always on the website. In the newspaper, I mean, they report what we do. They run. There's a little story that tells what the votes were for the week. When it's something good for the area, we try to call the paper or whoever, the radio, and try to let them know. People need to know about this. Or when we need someone to make calls, when we need people to make calls in support of something we're doing, again, we try to. Like I did the forum on the Vermont Yankee plant a couple of weeks ago, and I put that in the paper because I wanted people to come out and talk to Entergy and have their voice heard. And when we did the public hearing here on debt, I put out the word. I tried to get the word out so that people knew what was going on. So I mean, we do a lot. That's why I'm in 4 different town halls every week. I hit every single town at least twice a year for office hours, and I try to go to every little other event I can possibly get to so people have a chance to talk to me. I do my own email. I do Facebook. I do Twitter. I do LinkedIn. And yes, we even do go to your door. Every summer, I go door to door in Greenfield and a couple other towns, just with comment cards. What's going on? If you're there, great, I'll talk to you. If you're not, hey, mail it in. No one mails them in, but that's fine. They have it. They have the opportunity if they so choose. People are usually really happy to see it. Sometimes people are just like, "What? Politicians, get out of here!" But most of the time, people are like, "Wow, well, thanks for coming by." No, I don't have anything, because usually when you just show up at someone's door, that's what they say. It's like, "What? No, I don't have it." No, it's usually a good response. Yeah, but the comment cards themselves, I'd say it's 10% or less get mailed back. And that's out of a couple thousand. So. In Western Massachusetts, we're doing a job that is designed for someone that represents 1 to 3 towns and lives within 50 miles of Boston. They can run in and out at will. They have 3, 2, 1 city councils to deal with. Very different job. And for them, yeah, I think this is adequate because they can have a second job. They can do a lot of things. But for us out here in Western Massachusetts, like I said, 60,000 miles a year. I go through tires. I go through everything. 80 hours a week. You're away from your family. It's a lot. Now, I certainly don't think we're underpaid or that we're in poverty or anything like that. But there are times when it's close. Like people will complain. We get a travel allowance to go to Boston the days we go to Boston. No one out here ever, thankfully, has ever complained about it. But there's stories sometimes in the Boston paper. Look at the guy from the Berkshires. He's bringing in $6,000 of just to drive to work, which is completely ridiculous statement. But if there was ever an actual push to take that money away, that would probably be enough to push me that now it's unaffordable for people out here that aren't already rich or retired or something like that. The idea of having a full-time legislature with our income reflects the median pay in Massachusetts, and it's actually tied to inflation. So as pay goes up or goes down, we get a raise or we get a decrease in pay. And since I've been in, we've actually had 2 decreases in pay and 1 year stagnant. So, and that's fair because that's what the people of the Commonwealth are facing. So I want to face the same thing they're facing. It's not a great deal of money, and what Congress makes, and I don't begrudge them anything, they make 3 or 4 times more than we make. But I'd say they have a job that's 3 or 4 times more difficult as well. I think it's a roadblock to people wanting to get involved a lot of the time so I'm supposed to take off, let's say 10 years. Take 10 years off. I had to quit my job at Verizon to leave because you can't take a leave from work for 10 years or 3 years or anything. And for some people to act like we don't do anything, that we're villains, that we shouldn't be getting paid anything, we should just be basically giving up 10 years of our life. It's impossible for the average person to do that for a working class person who comes from very modest means. I couldn't do this without some kind of pay. Like in New Hampshire, I think they get paid $100 a year, but they don't meet all the time either. But I don't know how they do it. The question is thoughts on a Boston Olympics. As a Western Massachusetts representative, if the plan is a Boston-only Olympics and they want us to pay for it, then the answer is no. If, as a Western Massachusetts representative, we're going to use the Olympics as a tool to invest in our communities, that we're going to use it for transportation programs that should have been done years ago, that we're going to use it for infrastructure progress, that we're going to use it to expand internet and services like that it's going to result in thousands of jobs, building stuff for the next couple of years, And there's going to be events in Western Massachusetts, like at the Holyoke Volleyball Hall of Fame, Springfield, the Basketball Hall of Fame, canoeing in my district on the Deerfield River, or on the Connecticut River. Then I could see supporting that. But I don't think that's what's going to happen, so it's probably going to be a no. There's a lot to see, though, still. It's what they've done so far is not encouraging. So if the vote were today, I would vote no. Yeah, thank you for sitting through this.